On November 14, 1998, members of the Tectonic Theater Project traveled to Laramie, Wyoming, and conducted interviews with the people of the town. During the next year, we would return to Laramie several times and conduct over 200 interviews.
The play you're about to see is edited from those interviews, as well as journal entries by company members and other found texts. Company member Greg Pirati.
My first interview was with Detective Sergeant Hing of the Laramie Police Department. At the start of the interview, he was sitting behind his desk, sitting something like this. I was born and raised here. My family is third generation. My grandparents moved here in the early 1900s. We've had basically my daughter makes it fourth generation. Quite a while. It's a good place to live. Good people. Lots of space. Now, all the towns in southern Wyoming are laid out and spaced because the railroad came through. It was how far they could go before having to refuel and rewater. And Laramie was a major stopping point. That's why the towns are spaced so far apart. We're one of the largest states in the country and the least populated.
There's so much space between people and towns here, so much time for reflection.
Rebecca Hilliker, head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming.
You have an opportunity to be happy in your life here. I found that here people were nicer than in the Midwest where I used to teach because they were happy. They were glad the sun was shining, and it shines a lot here.
What you have is, you have your old-time, traditional type ranchers. They've been here forever. Laramie's been the hub for where they come for their supplies and stuff like that.
Stewardship is one thing all our ancestors taught us.
Eileen Engen, rancher.
If you don't take care of the land, then you ruin it and you lose your living. So you first of all have to take care of your land and do everything you can to improve it.
I love it here.
Doc O'Connor, limousine
You
driver.
could not put me back in that mess out there back east. Best part about it is the climate. Cold, the wind. Now they say the Wyoming wind will drive a man insane, but you know what? It don't bother me. Sometimes it bothers me, but most of the time it don't.
And then you have the university population.
I moved here after living in a couple of big cities.
Philip Dubois, president of the University of Wyoming.
Now, I loved it there, but you have to be out of your mind to let your kids play out after dark. And here, in summertime, well, I let my kids play out till 11 at night, and I don't even think twice about it.
And then you have the people who live in Laramie, basically.
I moved here from rural Texas.
Zachy Salmon, Laramie resident.
Now in Laramie, if you don't know a person, you will definitely know someone they know, so in that way it can only be 1 degree removed at most. And for me, I love it. I mean, I love going to the grocery store because I get to visit with 4 or 5 or 6 people every time I go. And I don't really mind people knowing my business because what's my business? I mean, my business is basically good.
I like the trains too. They don't bother me. Sometimes they bother me, but most of the time they don't. Even though one runs every 13 minutes out where I live.
Doc actually lives up in Bosler, but everybody in Laramie knows him. He's also not really a doctor.
They used to carry cattle, them trains. Now all they carry is diapers and cars.
I grew up in Cody, Wyoming.
April Silva, university student.
Laramie is better than where I grew up. I'll give it that.
It's a good place to live. Good people. Lots of space. Now, when that incident happened with that boy, a lot of press people came here. At one time, some of them followed me out to the crime scene. And, it was a beautiful day. Absolutely gorgeous day. Real clear and crisp. And the sky was that blue, you'll never be able to paint. It's just sky blue, just gorgeous. The mountains in the background, a little snow on them. And this one reporter that was out there said,
"Well, who found the boy? Who is even out here anyway?"
And I said, well, this is a really popular place for people to run. Mountain biking's really big out here. Horseback riding, it's just, it's close to town. And he looked at me and he said,
"Who in the hell would want to run out here?"
And I'm thinking, Buddy, you're just missing the point. All you gotta do is turn around, see the mountains, smell the air, listen to the birds, just take in what's around you. And they were just nothing but the story. I didn't feel judged. I thought that they were stupid. They're missing the point. They're just missing the whole point.
It's hard to talk about Laramie now, to tell you what Laramie is for us.
Jedediah Schultz.
If you would have asked me before, well, I would have told you Laramie's a beautiful town. It's secluded enough that you can have your own identity. A town with a strong sense of community. Everyone knows everyone. A town with a personality that most larger cities are stripped of. But now, after Matthew, I would say that Laramie is a town defined by an accident, a crime. We've become Waco, we've become Jasper. We're a noun, a definition, a sign. We may be able to get rid of that, but it's sure going to take a while.
Journal entries, members of the company, Andy Karras.
Moises called and said that he had an idea for his next theater project, but there was a somberness to his voice. So when I asked what it was going to be about, he told me he wanted to do a piece about what's happening in Wyoming.
Stephen Belber.
Lee told me the company was thinking of going out to Laramie to conduct interviews and wanted me to come, but I was hesitant. I have no real interest prying into a town's unraveling.
Amanda Gronage.
I've never done anything like this in my life. How do you get people to talk to you? What do you ask?
Moises Kaufman.
The company has agreed to go to Laramie for a week and interview people. I'm a bit afraid of taking 10 people on a trip of this nature. Must make safety rules. No one works alone. Everyone carries a cell phone. I've made preliminary contact with Rebecca Hilliker, the head of the theater department at the University of Wyoming. She's hosting a party for us the first night we're in Laramie. She's promised to introduce us to possible interviewees.
I must tell you that when I first heard that you were thinking about coming here, when you first called me, I wanted to say, you've just kicked me in the stomach. How can you do this to me? And then I thought, that's stupid. You're not doing this to me. And more importantly, I thought about it, and I've decided that we've just had so much negative closure on this whole thing. And the students really need to talk. When this first happened, they started talking about it. And then the media descended and all the dialogue stopped. You know, I love my students because they are free thinkers. And you may not like what they have to say. And you may not like their opinions because they can be very redneck. But they are honest and they are truthful. So there's an excitement here. There's a dynamic here with my students that I never had when I was in the Midwest or North Dakota, because there was so much Puritanism that dictated how people looked at the world that a lot of times they didn't have an opinion. You couldn't get them to express an opinion. And quite honestly, I'd rather have opinions that I don't like than to have that dynamic in education. There's a student I think you should talk to. His name is Jedediah Schultz.
I've lived in Wyoming my whole life. My family has lived in Wyoming, gosh, for generations. Now, when it came time to go to college, my parents couldn't afford to send me. I wanted to study theater. And so I knew that in order to go to college, I was going to have to get a scholarship. And so every year they had this competition, this Wyoming State high school competition. And I knew that if I didn't take first place in duets, that I wasn't going to get a scholarship. So I went to the university and I asked one of the theater professors, I was like, I need a killer scene. And he was like, well, here you go. This is it. And it was from Angels in America. So I read it, and I knew that if I did a good enough job, I could get first place. And so, when the time came, I went and I told my mom and dad so that they could come to the competition. Now, you have to understand, my parents, they come to everything. Every ball game, every hockey game. Jeez, everything that I've ever done. And so they brought me into their room, and they told me that if I did that scene, that they wouldn't come to the competition. Because they believed that it was wrong. That homosexuality is wrong. They felt that strongly about it, they didn't want to come see their son do probably the most important thing that he'd done to that point in his life. And I didn't know what to do. You know, I've never, ever gone against my parents' wishes before. So I was kind of nervous about it. But I decided to do it anyway. And all that I can remember from the competition is that when we were finished, my scene partner and I, we came together and we shook hands and there was a standing ovation. And oh my God, it was amazing! And that's how I can afford to be here at the university because of that scene. We took first place and we won. Oh, it's one of the most memorable moments of my life. And my parents weren't there. And to this day, that is the one thing that they've never seen me do. And thinking back on it, you know, I think, well, why did I do it? You know, why did I oppose my parents? Because I'm not gay, so why did I do it? And I guess the only honest answer is, well, I wanted to win. It was such a good scene. It was like the best scene. Hey, do you know Mr. Kushner? Maybe you could tell him.
Company member Greg Pirati.
We arrived today at the Denver airport and drove to Laramie. The moment we crossed the Wyoming border, I swear, I saw a herd of buffalo. Also, I thought it was strange that the Wyoming sign said,
Wyoming, like no place on earth.
instead of Wyoming, like no place else on earth.
Company member Lee Fondakowski.
I stopped at a local inn for a bite to eat, and my waitress said to me,
Hi, my name is Debbie. I was born in 1954, and Debbie Reynolds was big then. So yes, there are a lot of us around. But I promise that I won't slap you if you leave your elbows on the table.
Today, the company tried to explain to me, to no avail, what chicken fried steak was.
Now, are you from Wyoming, or are you just passing through?
We're just passing through.
Company member Barbara Pitts.
We arrived in Laramie tonight, just past the Welcome to Laramie sign, population 26,687. The first thing to greet us was Walmart. In the dark, we could be on any main drag in America, fast food chains, gas stations. But as we drove into the downtown area by the railroad tracks, the building still looked like a turn-of-the-century Western town. Oh, and as we passed by the University Inn, on the sign where amenities such as heated pool or cable TV are usually touted, it said, "Hate is not a Laramie value."
Greg Pirati.
I met today with two longtime Laramie residents, Allison Mears and Marge Murray, two social service workers who taught me a thing or two.
Well, what Laramie used to be like when Marge was growing up? Well, It was mostly rural.
Yeah, it was. I enjoyed it, you know. My kids all had horses.
Well, there was more land. I mean, you could keep your pet cow, your horse, your little chickens, you know, have your little bit of acreage.
And I could run around the house in my all-togethers, do the housework while the kids were in school, and nobody could see me. And if they got that close...
Well, then that's their problem.
I just want to make sure I got the expression right. In your all-togethers.
Well, yeah, honey, why wear clothes?
Now, how's he gonna use that, Miss McClain?
So, this was a big ranching town.
Oh, not just ranching. This used to be a big railroad town at one time, before they moved everything to Cheyenne and Green River and Omaha. And so now, well, it's just a drive-through spot for the railroad. Because, what was it, even back in the 50s? Well, there was one big roundhouse, and they had such a shop they could build a complete engine.
They did. My mom worked there.
Your mom worked in a roundhouse?
Yup, she washed engines. Her name was Minnie, and we used to, you know, sing that song for her. You know that song.
What song?
Run for the roundhouse, Minnie. They can't corner you there.
But I'll tell you, Wyoming is bad in terms of jobs. I mean, the university has its big, high, whoop-de-doo jobs, but Wyoming, unless you're a professional, the bulk of the people are working minimum wage jobs.
Yeah, I've been either in the service industry or bartending most of my life. Now I know everybody in town.
And she does.
And I do. But then I'll tell you, here in Laramie, there is a difference, and there always has been. What it is a class distinction. It's about the well-educated and the ones that are not. And the educated don't understand why the ones that are not don't get educated. That's why I told you before, my kids had to fight, because their mother was a bartender. Never mind, I was the best damn bartender in town.
And she was.
That's not bragging, that's fact.
But here in Laramie, if it weren't for the university, we'd just be SOL.
What's SOL?
Do I have to say it? Well, it's shit out of luck. Oh, Lordy, you got that on your tape. Boy, you are getting an education today.
Yeah, I guess I am. So, let me just ask you, what was your response when this happened to Matthew Shepard?
Well, I've been close enough to the case to know many of the people. I have a daughter that works on the sheriff's department. As far as the gay issue, I don't give a damn one way or another, as long as they don't bother me. And even if they did, I just say, no, thank you. And that is the attitude of most of the Laramie population. They might poke one if they were in a bar situation. You know, they had been drinking. They might actually smack one in the mouth. But then they just walk away. Most of them said they would just say, I don't swing that way, and whistle on about their business. Laramie is live and let live.
Well, I think Marge knows a whole lot more, except she's even willing to say, and we need to respect her for that.
Well, where are you going with this story?
Oh, well, we still haven't decided. Once we've finished, we're going to try to bring it around to Laramie.
Well, okay then. There are parts that I won't tell you.
Company member Andy Paris.
Today we met someone who actually knew Matthew Shepard. Trish Stager, owner of a shop in town, referred to him as Matt.
Matt used to come into my shop. That's how I knew him.
It was the first time that I had heard anyone refer to him as Matt instead of Matthew. Did he go by Matt to everyone?
Well, on October 2nd, I get a phone call about 10 after 7.
Doc O'Connor.
It's Matthew Shepard. And he says, can you pick me up on the corner of 3rd and Grand? So anyhow, I pull up to the corner to see who Matthew is, and it's this little guy, about 5'2", soaking wet. I bet you 97 pounds tops. They say he weighed 110, but I wouldn't believe it. They also said he was 5'5" in the newspapers, but this guy was really only about 5'2", 5'1". So he walks up to the window, and, I'm going to go in steps so you better understand the principle of this man. He walks up to the window, and I say, are you Matthew Shepard? And he said, yes, I'm Matthew Shepard, but I don't want you to call me Matthew or Mr. Shepard. I don't want you to call me anything. My name is Matt, and I want you to know that I am gay, and we're going to a gay bar. Do you have a problem with that? So I said, how are you paying? I mean, there's no gay bars in Laramie. For that matter, there's no gay bars in Wyoming. So he was hiring me to drive him to Fort Collins, Colorado, about an hour away. Matt was a blunt little shit, you know what I'm saying? Always was, but I liked him because he was straightforward. You see what I'm saying? Maybe gay, but straightforward. You see what I'm saying?
I don't know. How can any one person ever tell about another? You really should talk to my sister Romaine. She was a very close friend of Matthew's.
We never really called him Matthew, actually. Most of the time we called him Choo Choo, because we used to call him Matthew, and then we called him Choo Choo. And whenever I think of Matthew, I always think of his incredible beaming smile. I mean, he'd walk in and he'd just be like, and he'd smile at everyone, and he just made you feel great. And he would stare people down in the coffee shop, because he always wanted to sit on the end seat so he could talk to me while I was working. And if someone was sitting in that seat, he would just sit there and stare at them until they left, and then he would claim his spot. But Matthew definitely had a political side to him. I mean, he really wanted to get into political affairs. That's all his big interest was watching CNN or MSNBC. I mean, those were the only TV stations I ever saw his TV tuned into. He was really smart in political affairs, but not so smart on common sense things. So he moves to Laramie to go to school.
Matthew was very shy when he first came in.
John Peacock, Matthew Shepard's academic advisor.
To the point of being somewhat mousy, I might say. He was having difficulties adjusting, but this was his home, and he made that quite clear. And so this mousiness or shyness gave way to this person who was excited about a track he was going to embark on. He was figuring out wanting to work with human rights and how he was going to do it. When this happens, this person began to bloom a bit. And he was saying, wow, there are opportunities here for me. There are things I can do in the world. I can be important.
I did hear from Matthew about 48 hours before his attack, and he said that he had joined the gay and lesbian group on campus, and he said he was really enjoying it, and, he was getting ready for Pride Week and whatnot. He was really stoked about school. Yeah, he was really happy about being there.
In retrospect, and it's only in retrospect, of course, I think that's where he was headed, toward human rights. And that just adds to the irony and the tragedy of this.
Let me tell you something else here. There are more gay people in Wyoming than meets the eye. I know for a fact. And they're not particularly what you call them, the queens, the gay people, the queens, the runaround faggot type people. No, they're the ones throwing bale and hay and jumping on horses and branding them and kicking ass. You see what I'm saying? I always say never fuck with a Wyoming queer because they will kick you in your fucking ass. But that's not the point of what I'm trying to make. Because I know a lot of gay people in Wyoming. I know a lot of people, period. I've been lived up here some 40-odd years. You see what I'm saying? And I don't think people in Wyoming give a damn one way or the other if you're gay or you're straight. That's what I just said. It doesn't matter. If there's 8 men and 1 woman in a Wyoming bar, which is often the case, stop and think. Who's getting what? You see what I'm saying? Jeez, it doesn't take a big intelligent mind to figure that one out.
My understanding when I first came here
Catherine Connolly.
is that I was the first out lesbian or gay faculty member on campus. And that was in 1992. So that wasn't that long ago. I was asked at my interview what my husband did, so I came out then. Do you want a funny story? When you first get here, as a new faculty member, there's all these things you have to do. And so, I was in my office, and I noticed that this woman called. I was expecting, it was a health insurance phone call or something like that. And so I called her back. I could hear her. She's on her keyboard, clicking away. And I said, this is Kathy Conley, returning your phone call. And she said, oh, it's you. And I thought, this is bizarre. And she said, I hear you're gay. I hear you are. And I was like, uh-huh. And she said, I hear you came as a couple. I'm one too. Not a couple, just a person. And so she was a kind of lesbian who knew I was coming, and she wanted to come over and meet me immediately. And she later told me that there were other lesbians that she knew who wouldn't be seen with me, that I would irreparably taint them, that just to be seen with me could be a problem.
When I came here, I knew it was going to be hard as a gay man.
Jonas Sloniker.
But I kept telling myself, people should live where they want to live. And there were times when I would go down to Denver and I'd go to gay bars, and someone would ask me where I was from, and I'd say, Laramie, Wyoming. And I met so many men down there from Wyoming. So many gay men who grew up here, and they were like, this is not a place that I could live. How am I supposed to live here? I had to get out. But then, every once in a while, there'd be a guy. Oh gosh, I miss Laramie. I mean, I really love it there. That's where I want to live. And they get this starry-eyed look. And I'd be like, if that's where you want to live, do it. I mean, imagine if more gay people stayed in small towns. But that's easier said than done, of course.
Today we're moving from our motel and heading toward the Best Western.
Moises Kaufman.
My hope is that it's a better Western.
Amanda Grange.
Today, we divided up to go to different churches in the community. And Moises and I were given a Baptist church. And we were welcomed into the church by the Reverend himself, greeting us at the entrance to the chapel. This is what I remember about his sermon that morning.
My dear brothers and sisters, I am here today to bring you the word of the Lord. Now, I have a simple truth that I share with my colleagues, and I'm going to share that truth with you today. The word is either sufficient or it is not. Now, scientists tell me that the world, that human history is 5 billion or 6 billion years old. After all, what's a few billion years, give or take, right? But the Bible, the Bible tells me that human history, the Bible tells me that human history is 6,000 years old. The word is either sufficient or it is not.
The sociology of religion in the West.
Stephen Meade Johnson, Unitarian minister.
Dominant religious traditions in this town, Baptist, Mormon, they're everywhere. It's not just Salt Lake, They're all over. They're like jam on toast down here.
The Mormon church has a little different thing going for it that irritates some folks.
Doug Laws, state ecclesiastical leader for the Mormon Church.
And that is that we absolutely believe that God still speaks to man. We don't think that it happened and some folks wrote about it in the Bible. God speaks to us today, and we believe that. We believe that the prophet of the church has the authority to receive inspiration and revelation from God.
So, the spectrum would be on the left side of the panel. So far left that I'm probably sitting by myself is me and the Unitarian Church. Now, Unitarians are by and large humanists, many of whom are atheists. I mean, we're not even sure we're a religion. Now, to my right of the spectrum, to his credit, Father Roger, Catholic priest who is well established here, and God bless him, he did not equivocate at all when this happened. He hosted the vigil for Matthew that night.
I was really jolted because, when we did the vigil, we wanted to get other ministers involved, and we called some of them, and they were not going to get involved. And it was like, we are going to stand back and wait and see which way the wind is blowing. And that angered me immensely. We are supposed to stand out as leaders. I thought, wow, what is going on here?
God has set boundaries, and one of our responsibilities is to learn. What is it that God wants? So you study scripture, you look to your leaders. Then you know what the bounds are. Now once you kind of know what the bounds are, then you sort of get a feel for what's out of bounds. There was a proclamation that came out on the family. A family is defined as one woman and one man and children. That is a family. That's about as clear as you can state it. There's no sexual deviation in the Mormon church, no leniency. We just think it's out of bounds.
Now I warn you, you will be mocked. You will be ridiculed for the singularity of your faith. But let the Bible be your guide. It's in there. It is all in there.
Conservative Christians, the pastors, the conservative ones, they were silent on this. You see, conservative Christians, they use the Bible to show the rest of the world. It says here in the Bible, and most Americans believe, and they do, that the Bible is the Word of God. And how are you going to fight that?
Now I am a biblicist, which means that the Bible does not need me to be true. No. The Bible is true whether I believe it or not. The Word is either sufficient or it is not.
I arrived in Laramie on September 15th. I looked around. Tumbleweed, cement factory. I said, what in the hell am I doing in Wyoming? 3 weeks later, I find out what the hell I'm doing in Wyoming.
I had breakfast this morning with a university student named Zubada Ullah, an Islamic feminist who likes to do things her own way.
I've lived in Laramie since I was 4. Yeah. My parents are from Bangladesh. And 2 years ago, because I'm Muslim, I decided to start wearing a scarf. And that's really changed my life here in Laramie. Yeah, like people say things to me, like, why do you have to wear that thing on your head? Like, when I go to the grocery store, I'm not looking to give people Islam 101, you know what I mean? And so I'll be like, well, because it's part of my religion. And they'll be like, and this is the worst part, because they'll be like, I know it's part of your religion, but why? And how am I supposed to go into the whole doctrine of physical modesty and my own spiritual relationship with the Lord standing there with my pop and chips? You know what I mean?
Yes.
You know, it's so unreal that a group from New York would be writing a play about Laramie. Then I was thinking, like, you're gonna be in a play about my town. You're gonna be on stage in New York, and you're gonna be pretending like you're us. That's so weird.
Hello, my name is Amanda Gronich, and I'm here in Laramie working with a theater company. And I went to the Reverend's, your husband's church on Sunday, and I was extremely interested in talking with the Reverend about some of his thoughts about recent events.
Well, I don't think he'll want to talk to you. He has very biblical views about homosexuality. He doesn't condone that kind of violence, but he doesn't condone that kind of lifestyle, you know? And he was just bombarded with the press after this happened, and the media has just been terrible about this whole thing.
Oh, I know, I really understand. It must have been just terrible.
Oh, yes, I think we are all just hoping that this just goes away.
Well, do you think maybe I could call your husband back and speak with him just briefly?
Well, all right. You can call him back tonight at 9 o'clock.
Thank you so much. I'll do that.
Well, today, Barbara and I went to the Fireside Bar, which was the last place Matthew was seen in public.
The Fireside definitely feels like a college bar, with a couple of pool tables and a stage area for karaoke night. Still, the few regulars in the late afternoon were hardly the college crowd.
The first person we talked to was Matt Mickelson, the owner.
My great-great-grandfather moved here in 1862. He opened up Laramie's first ever opera house. It was called the Old Blue Front. And in 1872, Louisa Grandma Swain cast the first woman's ballot in any free election in the world. And that's why Wyoming is called the Equality State. So what I want to do is I want to reestablish my bar business as the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium, you know. I want to have a restaurant. I want to have a gift shop. I want to have a pool table. I want to do all this shit, you know. And every night's going to be ladies' night. So what I want to do is I want to reestablish the Fireside as the Old Blue Front Opera House and Good Time Emporium.
So, what about the night that Matthew Shepard was here?
Oh, well, it was karaoke night that night, about 20 or 30 people here or so. Matthew Shepard came in, you know, just kind of hanging out, sitting at the bar, sitting right where you're sitting. You know, if you really want to talk to somebody about this, you should probably talk to Matt Galloway. He was the kid that was bartending that night. You should probably talk to him. His character stands for itself. Hey, is Galloway bartending tonight?
Okay, I'm gonna make this quick, brief, get it over with, but it will be everything, factual, just the facts. Here we go. 10 o'clock, I clock in. Usual time, Tuesday nights, 10:30, Matthew Shepard shows up, alone, sits down, orders a Heineken.
Phil Labrie, friend of Matthew Shepard.
Matt liked to drink Heineken, and nothing else. Heineken. Even though you gotta pay $9.50 for a six-pack, you'd always buy the same beer.
So what can I tell you about Matt? If you had 100 customers like him, it'd be the most perfect bar I've ever been, okay? And that's nothing to do with sexual orientation. It's mannerisms, manners, politeness, intelligence, taking care of me, as in tips, everything. Clean cut, dress nice. Some people you just know. You know, sits down, please, thank you, offers intellect, you know, within their vocabulary, you know, so he kicks it there. He didn't seem to have any worries, like he was looking for anyone. He was just, you know, enjoying his drink and the company around. Then approximately 11:45, 11:45, Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson come in. Now, I didn't know their names then, but they're the accused. They're the perps. They're the accused. So they come in just very stone-faced, you know, dirty, grungy, rude. Gimme. that type of thing. You know, so they walk up to the bar and, as you know, pay for a picture with dimes and quarters, which is something, I mean, you don't forget. You don't forget that. $5.50 in dimes and quarters? That's a freaking nightmare. Now, McKinney and Henderson, they didn't seem to be intoxicated at all. You know, they just kind of came in, ordered the beer, took the picture with them back into the pool room, and then kind of kept to themselves. Then I noticed probably a half hour later they were just kind of, you know, walking around, no beer. And I remember thinking to myself, like, I'm not going to ask these guys if they want another one because, you know, obviously they just paid for a picture with dimes and quarters. I have a real good feeling they don't have any more money.
Romaine Patterson.
Money meant nothing to Matthew, because he came from a lot of it. And he would, like, hand over his wallet in 2 seconds, because money meant nothing. His shoes might have meant something. They can say it was robbery. I don't buy it, for even an iota of a second.
Then I noticed, a few moments later, Aaron and Russell were talking with Matthew Shepard.
Aaron said that a guy walked up to him and said that he was gay and wanted to get with Aaron and Russ.
Kristen Price, girlfriend of Aaron McKinney.
And that he got aggravated with it and told him that he was straight and didn't want anything to do with him and walked off. He said that is when he and Russell went to the bathroom and decided to pretend they were gay and get him in the truck and rob him.
Okay, no. They stated that Matt approached them, that he came on to them. I absolutely, positively disbelieve and refute the statement. 100%. Refute it. I'm going to give you 2 reasons why. 1, character reference. Why would he approach them? Why them? He wasn't approaching anybody else in the bar. They say he's gay, right? He's a flaming gay. He's going to come on to people like that? Bullshit. He never came on to me. Hello? He's going to come on to them? I don't believe it. 2, territorialism is the word I will use for this. And that's the fact that Matt was sitting there. Aaron and Russell were in the back, in the pool room. Upon their first interaction, they were in Matt's area. In the area that Matt had been seen sitting all night. So who approached who by that?
But Matthew was the kind of person, like, he would never not talk to someone for any reason. Like, if someone started talking to him, he'd just be like, oh, blah, 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 you know? He never had any problem just striking up a conversation with anybody.
Matt did feel lonely a lot of times. Me knowing that and knowing how gullible Matt could be, he would have walked right into it. The fact that he was at the bar alone, without any friends, made him that much more vulnerable.
So here's the thing, and this is what I'm testifying to. Because you know I'm also basically the key eyewitness in this case, right? So what I'm testifying to is that I saw Matthew leave. I saw Matthew leave with 2 individuals. Now, I didn't see their faces, but I saw the backs of their heads. And at the same time, McKinney and Henderson were no longer in the bar. So, you do the math.
Actually, I think it was the DJ that was the last person to speak with Matt last night on his way out. Gave him a cigarette or something. His name is Shadow.
I was the last person to talk to Matt after he left the fireside. I was just bullshitting around with my shit and he stopped me. I stopped him actually and he's like, hey, Shadow, da-da-da. And I was like, what, man, you getting ready to leave? And he's like, yeah, man, and this and that. But then I noticed them 2 guys. And they stood outside, and you could see it. They were standing there, you know. And he was looking over at them, and they were looking back at him. And I stood and talked to Matt for like a good 10 minutes. And you seen the guys with him. You seen them getting like worried, like you know, anxious to leave and shit. So when they took off, I seen it. When they took off. And it was in a black truck. It was a small truck, and the 3 of them sat in the front seat, and Matt sat in the middle. And I didn't think nothing of it. You know, I didn't figure them guys was gonna be like that.
A friend of Aaron McKinney.
Oh, I've known Aaron a long time. Aaron was a good kid. I liked Aaron a lot. That's why I was shocked when I heard this. I'm like, I know he was living out far at his trailer house is what he told me with his girl. They just started dating last summer. They must have gotten pregnant as soon as they started dating, because they had a kid. He was only 21 years old, but he was running around with a kid. You see, that's the kind of person Aaron was. Just like he always dressed in like big clothes, like in like Tommy Hilfiger, Polo, Gucci. At the time I knew him, he's just a young kid trying to, he just wanted to fit in, acting tough, acting cool, but, you could get in his face about it and he would back down like he was some kind of scared kid.
Sherry Amundsen.
Rassoul was just so sweet. He's the one that was the Eagle Scout. His whole presence was just quiet and sweet. So of course it doesn't make sense to me. And I know people snap and whatever, and it wasn't like a real intimate relationship. I was just his landlord. I did work with him at the chuck wagon too, and I remember like at the Christmas party, he was totally drunk out of his mind. Like we all pretty much were, just party time. And he wasn't belligerent. He didn't change. His personality didn't change. He was still the same little meek Rassoul. And I remember him coming up to me and saying, "When you have a chance, Sherry, can I have a dance?" We never did get around to doing that, but now I just want to shake him, What were you thinking? What the hell were you thinking?
The fence.
Stephen Meade Johnson.
The fence. I've been out there 4 times. I've taken visitors. That place has become a pilgrimage site. Clearly, that's a very powerful, personal experience to go out there. It is so stark and so empty. You can't help but think of Matthew out there for 18 hours in nearly freezing temperatures, with that view up there, isolated. And the God, my God, why have you forsaken me, comes to mind.
Company member Greg Pierotti.
Phil LeBrie, a friend of Matthew's, took us to the fence this morning. I broke down the minute I touched it. I feel such a strong kinship with this young man. On the way back, I made sure no one saw me crying.
Lee Fondakowski.
Greg was crying on the way back. I felt the same way, but I couldn't bring myself to tears. I have an interview this afternoon with Aaron Kreifels. He's the boy who found Matthew out there at the fence, and I don't think I'm up for it right now. I'll see if someone else can do it.
Well, I took off on my bicycle around 5:00 p.m. on Wednesday from my dorm. I just felt like taking a ride, so I went up to the top of Cactus Canyon, and I'm not real super familiar with that area, so on the way back down, I didn't know where I was going, so I was just kind of picking the way to go, which now, well, it just makes me think that God wanted me to find him, because there's no way I was going to go that way. So I was in some deep ass sand, and I wanted to turn around, but for some reason I kept going. And I went along, and there was this rock on the ground, and I just drilled it. I went over the handlebars, and I ended up on the ground. So got up, and I dusted myself off, and I was looking around, and I noticed something, which ended up to be Matt, and he was just lying there by a fence. And I just thought it was a scarecrow. I was like, Halloween's coming. just thought it was a Halloween gag, so I didn't think much of it. So I got my bike and I walked it around the fence that was there. It was a buck type fence, and when I got closer to him, I noticed his hair. And that was a major key for me in noticing it was a human being, was his hair. Because I just thought it was a dummy. Seriously, I noticed. I even noticed the chest going up and down, and I still thought it was a dummy, you know? I just thought it was like some kind of mechanism. But when I saw hair, I knew it was a human being. So I ran to the nearest house. I ran just as fast as I could, and I called the police.
I responded to the call.
Officer Reggie Flutie.
When I got there, at first the only thing I could see was partially somebody's feet, and I got out of my vehicle and raced over. I seen what appeared to be a young man, 13, 14 years old, because he was so tiny, laying on his back, and he was tied to the bottom end of a pole. I did the best I could. The gentleman that was laying on the ground, Matthew Shepard, he was covered in dry blood all over his head. There was dry blood underneath him, and he was barely breathing. He was doing the best he could. I was going to breathe for him, and I couldn't get his mouth open. His mouth wouldn't open for me. He was covered in, like I said, partially dry blood and blood all over his head. The only place he did not have any blood on him, on his face, was what appeared to be where he had been crying down his face. His head was distorted, you know, it did not look normal. He looked as if he had a real harsh head wound.
I was working the emergency room that night. Matthew Shepard came in. And I don't think that any of us have seen a patient in that condition for quite some time. Well, those of us who have worked in big city hospitals might have, but we have people here who have not worked in big city hospitals, so it's just not something you expect here. Well, you expect it. You expect to see those kinds of injuries from a car going down a hill at 80 miles an hour. You expect to see those kinds of injuries from that horrendous, terrible thing, but you just don't expect to see that from someone doing this to another person. The ambulance report said it was a beating, so we knew.
There was nothing I could do. I mean, if there was anything I could have done to help him, I would have done it. But there was nothing. And I was like yelling at him at the top of my lungs, like, hey, wake up! Hello! But he didn't move. He didn't flinch. He didn't anything.
He was tied to the fence. His hands were thumbs out in what we call a cuffing position, the way we handcuff people. He was bound with a real thin white rope. It went around the bottom of the pole, about 4 inches up off the ground. His shoes were missing. He was tied extremely tight, so I used my boot knife and tried to slip it between the rope and his wrist. I had to be extremely careful not to harm Matthew any further.
Your first thought is that it's, somebody from out of town that just comes in and beats somebody up. Things like that happen. Shit happens, and it happens in Laramie. But when somebody just beats somebody over and over, it's just something that offends us. I think that's a good word for it. It offends us.
He was bound so tight, I finally got the knife through there. I'm sorry. We rolled him over to his left side. When we did that, he quit breathing. Immediately, I put him back on his back, and that was just enough of an adjustment. It gave me enough room to cut him free there. I seen the EMS unit trying to get to the location. Once the ambulance got there, we put a neck collar on him, placed him on a backboard, and scooted him from underneath the fence. Then Rob drove the ambulance to Ivinson Hospital's emergency room.
Now the strange thing is, 20 minutes before Matthew Shepard was brought in, Aaron McKinney came in with his girlfriend. Now I guess he had got into a fight later on that night back in town, so here I am working on Aaron, and then all of a sudden the ambulance brings in Matthew. Now, remember, at this point, I do not know that there was a connection at all. So I tell Aaron to wait, and then I go and treat Matthew. So there's Aaron in one room of the ER and Matthew just 2 doors down. And once we saw Matthew, we knew that his condition was way out of our capabilities. So I called a neurosurgeon at Poudre Valley, and he was on the road in about an hour and 15 minutes, I think.
They showed me a picture. Days later, I saw a picture of Matthew. I would have never recognized him.
And then, 2 days later, I find out the connection, and I am very, very struck. These are 2 kids. They were both my patients, and they were 2 kids. I took care of both of them, of both their bodies. And for a moment, I wondered if this is how God feels. When he looks down on us, that we're all his kids. Our bodies, our souls. And I felt a great deal of compassion for both of them.
This is John Peacock, Matthew's academic advisor.
Well, the news reports started trickling out on Thursday, but no names were mentioned. The brutality of the crime was not mentioned. All that was mentioned was that a man, Laramie man, was found beaten out on the prairie, basically. Then later that evening, they mentioned his name. And I was like, that can't. That's not the Matthew Shepard I know. That's not my student. That's not the person I've been meeting with.
I was in the coffee shop.
Romaine Patterson.
And someone pulled me aside and said, I don't know much, but they say there's been a young man who's been beaten in Laramie, and they said his name is Matthew Shepard. And he said, do you think this could be our Matthew? And I said, well, yeah, it sounds like it could be our Matthew. So I called up my sister Trish, and I said, tell me everything you know. I'm just like, I need to know anything you know, because I don't know anything.
So I'm talking to my sister on the phone, and that's when the whole story came out on Channel 5 News. And it was just like, ba-boom.
The news reports kept rolling in. A young University of Wyoming student, his age, description. And I said, oh my God.
And I just felt sick to my stomach. It's just instantly sick to my stomach. And I had to tell Romaine, yes, it was Matthew. It was your friend.
Well, I'll tell you what is overwhelming.
Matt Galloway.
Friday morning, I first find out about it. I go to class, walk out, boom, there it is, in the branding iron. So immediately, I drive to the nearest newsstand to buy a Laramie boomerang because I want more details. So I buy that, go home. Before I can even open the paper, my boss calls me. He says,
did you hear about what happened?
I go, yeah.
Well, was he in the bar Tuesday night?
I'm like, yes, he was.
Well, you gotta get down to the bar right now. We gotta discuss this. We gotta talk about what's about to happen.
By this time I started getting upset, but still the severity hadn't come out yet.
It was Thursday afternoon.
Rulon Stacy at Poudre Valley Hospital.
I got a call. We just got a kid in from Wyoming, and it looks like he may be the victim of a hate crime. We have a couple of newspaper reporters here asking questions. And so we agreed we needed one spokesperson, As CEO, I'll do that. We'll try and gather all of the information that we can.
And then I watched the 10 o'clock news that night where they started talking about the nature and the seriousness of it.
So I'm on the phone with Mickelson, and he's like,
We gotta go to the arraignment. We gotta make sure that we can identify these guys and make sure that they were in the bar.
so we go to the arraignment.
Our focus today turns to Laramie, Wyoming, and the Albany County Courthouse, where Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson are being charged with the brutal beating of Matthew Shepard, a gay University of Wyoming student.
The arraignment was on Friday, right around lunchtime, and I said, I'm just going. I just took off. It's just down the street. So I walked a few blocks, and I went. Has anybody told you about the arraignment? There are probably about 100 people from town, and probably as many news media by this point. A lot more of the details had come out. The fact that the perpetrators were kids themselves, local kids, that everyone who's from around here has some relationship to. And what everyone was really, I think, waiting on pins and needles for what would happen when the perpetrators walked in. And what happened? There's 200 people in the room at this point. They walked in their complete orange jumpsuits and their shackles, and you could have heard a pin drop. It was incredibly solemn. I mean, lots of people were getting teary at this point. Then the judge came in and did a reading. There's a reading of the evidence that the prosecution has, and it's a statement of facts. And the reading of the facts was...
The essential facts are that the defendants, Aaron James McKinney and Russell Arthur Henderson, met Matthew Shepard at the Fireside Bar. And after Mr. Shepard confided that he was gay, the subjects deceived Mr. Shepard into leaving with them in their vehicle to a remote area. Upon arrival at said area, both subjects tied their victim to a buck fence, robbed him, tortured him, and beat him. Both defendants were later contacted by officers of the Laramie Police Department, who observed inside the cab of their pickup a credit card and a pair of black patent leather shoes belonging to the victim, Matthew Shepard.
I don't think there was anyone who was left in that courtroom who wasn't crying at the end of it. I mean, it lasted 5 minutes, but it kept on getting more and more horrific, ending with...
Said defendants left the victim begging for his life.
Sergeant Haynes.
How does this happen? I think a lot of people just don't understand, and even I don't really understand, how someone can do something like that. We have one of the most vocal populations of gay people in the state. Pretty much live and let live.
Laramie resident Jeffrey Lockwood.
My secret hope was that they were from somewhere out of town, you know? That you can kind of create this sort of a distance. We don't grow children like that here. Well, clearly we do grow children like that here.
So that was the arraignment. And my response was pretty catatonic. Not sleeping, not eating. Don't leave me alone right now.
More and more details came out about the sheer brutality, the motivations, how it happened. And quite frankly, the media descended and there was no time to reflect on it anymore.
Laramie, Wyoming, often called the Gem City of the Plains, is now at the eye of the storm.
Aaron McKinney and his friend Russell Henderson came from the poor side of town.
As a gay college student, lay hospitalized in critical condition after a severe beating.
People would like to think that what happened to Matthew was an exception to the rule, but it was an extreme version of what happens in our schools on a daily basis.
It's a tough business, as Matt Shepard knew, and as his friends all know, to be gay in cowboy country.
It was huge, yeah, herds. There were hundreds of reporters, and that puts a big dent in this town's population. Reporters everywhere. News trucks everywhere on campus and in town. We're not used to that kind of attention. We're not used to that kind of exposure.
Tiffany Edwards, local reporter.
These people are predators. Like this one journalist actually caught one of the judges in the bathroom at the urinal and was like asking him questions. And the judge was like, "Excuse me, can I please have some privacy?" And the journalist was like all offended that he asked for privacy. I mean, this is not how journalism started, like the Gutenberg press, you know?
Now, when hard copy came and taped me, I taped them at the exact same time. I have every word I ever said on tape, so that if they ever try to do anything funny, they better watch their fucking ass.
Wyoming Governor Jim Geringer, a first-term Republican up for re-election.
I am outraged and sickened by the heinous crimes committed on Matthew Shepard. I extend my most heartfelt sympathies to the family.
Governor, you haven't pushed hate crime legislation in the past.
I would like to urge the people of Wyoming against overreacting in a way that gives one group special rights over others. We will wait and see if the vicious beating and torture of Matthew Shepard was motivated by hate.
You got the beginning of the news story with the graphics in the background? Murder in Wyoming. Wyoming's dripping red like it's got blood on it or something. And it's like, what's this? This is sensationalism. And we're here going, wait a minute. We had the guys in jail in less than a day. And I think that's pretty damn good.
And for us to be more or less maligned.
Eileen and Gil Engen.
That we're not a good community, and we are. The majority of people here are good people.
Well, you get bad apples once in a while. And I think the gay community took this as an advantage, saying this is a good time to exploit this.
Bill McKinney, father of one of the accused.
Had this been a heterosexual those boys decided to take out and rob, this never would have made the national news. Now my son is guilty without even having a trial.
Look, I do think that the media actually made people accountable because they made people think. Because people were sitting in their homes, like watching TV and listening to CNN and watching Dan Rather and going, Jesus Christ, well, that's not how it is here. Well, how is it here?
Matthew Shepard, medical update at 3 p.m. Saturday, October 10th.
By this point, I looked out there where there had been 2 or 3 reporters. There must have been 10 or 15 still photographers, another 20 or 30 reporters, and 10 video cameras. The family had just arrived, had barely introduced myself to them. I looked out there and I thought, my gosh, what am I going to do? Matthew Shepard was admitted in critical condition approximately 9:15 p.m. on October 7th. When he arrived, he was unresponsive and breathing support was being provided. Matthew's major injuries upon arrival consisted of hypothermia and a fracture from behind his head to just in front of the right ear. This has caused bleeding in the brain as well as pressure on the brain. There were also several lacerations on his head, face, and neck. Matthew's temperature has fluctuated over the last 24 hours, ranging from 98 to 106 degrees. We have had difficulty controlling his temperature. Matthew's parents arrived at 7 p.m. October 9th and are now at his bedside. The following is a statement from them. First of all, we want to thank the American public for their kind thoughts about Matthew and their fond wishes for his speedy recovery. We appreciate your prayers and goodwill, and we know they are something that Matthew would appreciate too. We also have a special request for the members of the media. Matthew is very much in need of his family at this time, and we ask that you respect our privacy as well as Matthew's, so we may concentrate all of our efforts, thoughts, and love on our son. Thank you very much.
Both Aaron McKinney and Russell Henderson pled not guilty to charges. Their girlfriends, Kristen Price and Chastity Paisley, also pled not guilty after being charged as accessories after the fact.
On our next trip, we spoke with Chief Investigating Officer on the case, Detective Rob Debris of the Albany County Sheriff's Department.
Well, I guess the thing that really bothered me the most was, when I went down to Poudre Valley to actually See, Matthew, I guess the thing that really bothered me the most was seeing him and touching him, you know. As a homicide detective, you look at a lot of bodies, but, you know, here he is. Just this kid sitting there fighting for his life, trying to make it. I wanted it to be by the book so bad.
I keep seeing that picture in my head when I found it.
Aaron Kreifels.
And it's not pleasant whatsoever. I don't want it there. I want to get it out. That's the biggest part for me is seeing that picture in my head. And it's kind of unbelievable to me, you know, that I happen to be the person that found him, because the big question with me, well, with my religion is, why did God want me to find him?
I know how to take care of myself, and I was irrationally terrified.
Catherine Connolly.
So, what that means is not letting my 12-year-old son walk the streets. Seeing a truck do a U-turn and thinking it's coming after me. Having to stop because I'm shaking so bad. And in fact, the pickup truck did not come after me. But my reaction was to have my heart in my mouth.
Ultimately, no matter how you dice it, I did have an opportunity.
Matt Galloway.
If I had amazing hindsight of 2020 to have stopped what occurred, I mean, and I keep thinking, I should have noticed. These guys shouldn't have been talking to this guy. I shouldn't have had my head down when I was washing dishes for those 20 seconds. Things I could have done. What the hell was I thinking?
So you do a lot of studying, and you spend hours and hours and hours, and you're studying. You know, you gotta talk to the officers on the case, make sure that they understand, speak with the key witnesses, and then all of a sudden I just get this flash of Matthew's face. I wanted it so tight that there was no way that they were going to get out of this.
One of the things that happened when I got to the fence,
Reggie Flutie.
it was just such an overwhelming amount of blood. And we try to wear protective gloves, but we had a really cheap sheriff at the time, and he bought us shit gloves, you know. You put them on, and they kept breaking, so finally you just ran out of gloves, you know. So you figure, well, you know, don't hesitate. You know, that's what your mind tells you all the time. Don't hesitate. And so you just keep moving, and you try to help Matthew and find an airway, and, you know, that's what you do, you know.
The thing I wasn't telling you before is that Reggie is my daughter.
Marge Murray.
And when she first told me she wanted to be a police officer, well, I thought there was not a better choice for her. She could handle whatever came her way.
Probably a day and a half later, the hospital called me and told me Matthew had HIV. And the doctor said, you've been exposed and you've had a bad exposure. Because you see, I've been building a lean-to for my llamas, and my hands had a bunch of open cuts on them. So I was kind of screwed, you know? And you think, oh shoot, you know?
Would you like to talk about losing sleep?
So I said to the doctor, okay, what do I do? And they said, get up here. So I got up there and we started the ATZ drugs immediately.
Now they told me that's a medication that if it's administered 36 hours after you've been exposed, it can maybe stop your getting the disease.
That is a mean, nasty medicine. Mean. I've lost 10 pounds and a lot of my hair.
And quite frankly, I just wanted to lash out at somebody. Not at Matthew. Please understand that. Not one of us was mad at Matthew. But we maybe wanted to squeeze McKinney's head off. And I think about Henderson, you know, two absolutely human beings cause so much misery for so many people. It's been terrible for my whole family, but mostly for her and her kids.
I think it brought home to my girls what their mom does for a living.
Well, Reggie, you know what I'm gonna tell you now.
And my parents told me, they both said the same damn thing.
You're quitting this damn job.
And it's just a parent thing, and they're terribly proud of you because you do a good job, whether it's handling a drunk or handling a case like this, but they don't want you getting hurt.
Like I said before, there's a right way, a wrong way, and then there's Reggie's way.
So finally I said, oh, for God's sakes, lighten up, Francis.
You are so stubborn.
They say I'm stubborn and I don't believe them, but I just think, okay, I've heard your opinion and now here's mine. I'm 39 years old. What are they going to do? Spank me?
Reggie, don't give me any ideas.
It looked pretty funny. What can they say?
I just hope that she doesn't go before me. I just couldn't handle that.
University of Wyoming President Philip Dubois.
So this is a young person who read my statement to the Denver Post and sent an email to me directly and said,
You and the straight people of Laramie and Wyoming are guilty of the beating of Matthew Shepard, just as the Germans who looked the other way are guilty of the deaths of the Jews, the gypsies, and the homosexuals. You have taught your straight children to hate their gay and lesbian brothers and sisters. Unless and until you acknowledge that Matt Shepard's beating is not just some random occurrence, not just the work of a couple of random crazies, you have Matthew's blood on your hands.
and I can't begin to tell you what that actually does to you. It's like you cannot possibly understand what this has done to me, to my family, and to my community.
That first week alone, vigils for Matthew Shepard were held in Laramie, Denver, Fort Collins, and Colorado Springs. Soon after, Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco, Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Nashville, Minneapolis, and Portland, Maine, among others.
In Los Angeles, 5,000 people gathered. And in New York City, a political rally ended in civil disobedience and hundreds of arrests. And the Poudre Valley Hospital website received close to 1 million visitors from across the country and around the world, all expressing hope for Matthew's recovery.
Matthew Shepard medical update at 9 a.m. Sunday, October 11th.
As of 9 a.m. today, Matthew Shepard remains in critical condition. The family continues to emphasize that the media respect their privacy. The family also wants to thank the American public for their kind thoughts and concern for Matthew.
There are certain things when I sit in church,
Jedediah Schultz.
and the Reverend will tell you flat out that he doesn't agree with homosexuality. And I don't know. I think right now I'm going through changes. I'm still learning things about myself, and I don't think I know enough about certain things to make a decision that says homosexuality is right, when you've been raised your whole life that it's wrong, and right now I would say that I don't agree with it. Yeah, that I don't agree with it. But maybe that's just because I could never do it. And speaking in religious terms, I don't think that's how God intended it to happen. But I don't hate homosexuals. I mean, I'm not going to persecute them or anything like that at all. I mean, that's not going to get in the way between me and the other person at all.
Well, it's preached in schools that being gay is okay and yada, yada, yada.
Conrad Miller.
And if my kids asked me, I'd set them down and I'd say, well, this is what gay people do. This is what animals do. And I'd say, this is the life. This is the lifestyle. And I'd say, this is what they do. And this is why I believe it's wrong.
There's more gay people around than what you might think.
Murdoch Cooper.
And they don't bother anybody because most of them that are gay or lesbian know damn well who to talk to. And if they step out of line, they're just asking for it. Now, some people say he made a pass at it. But you don't pick up regular people. Now, I'm not excusing their actions, but it made me feel better that it was partially Matthew Shepard's fault and partially the guys who did it. Maybe it's 50-50.
Yes, as a lesbian, I was more concerned for my safety.
Zaki Salman.
I think we all were. And I think it's because somewhere inside, we all know it could happen to us anytime, I mean, I'd be afraid to walk down the street and display any sort of physical affection for my partner. You don't do that here in Laramie.
Well, there's this whole idea. You leave me alone, I leave you alone.
Jonas Sloniker.
And it's even in some of the Western literature, live and let live. That is such crap. I tell my friends that. Even my gay friends bring it up sometimes. I'm like, that is crap, What it really boils down to is, if I don't tell you I'm a fag, you won't beat the crap out of me. What's so great about that? That's a great philosophy.
We went to the candle vigil.
Zubada Ula.
And it was so good to be with people who felt like shit. I kept feeling like I don't deserve to feel this bad, And then somebody got up there and said, blah, 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 and then he said, I'm getting this all wrong, but basically he said, well, come on guys, let's show the world that Laramie is not this kind of a town. But it is this kind of a town. If it wasn't this kind of a town, then why did this happen here? I mean, you know what I mean? Like, that's a lie. Because it happened here. So how can it not be a town where this kind of thing happens? Like, that's just totally like looking at an Escher painting and getting all confused. Like, it's just like totally like circular logic. And like, how can you even say that? And we have to mourn this. We have to be sad that we live in a town, a state, a country where shit like this happens. I mean, these are people trying to distance themselves from the crime, and we need to own this crime. I feel everyone needs to own it. We are like this. We are like this. We are like this.
I was at the Fireside Bar one afternoon and I ran into two friends of Aaron McKinney, Shannon and Jen. So, you knew Aaron well, right?
Yeah, we both did. When I first found out, I thought it was really, really awful. I don't know whether Aaron was fucked up or whether he was, I don't know, coming down or what. I mean, Matthew had money. Shit, he had nicer clothes than I did. Matthew was a little rich bitch.
Well, you shouldn't call him a rich bitch, though. That's not right.
I'm not saying he's a bad guy, because he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, said the wrong things. I don't know. I won't lie to you. I mean, there are times in my life when I was all messed up on meth and I thought about going out and robbing. I mean, I never did, but yeah, it's right there. It's easy money.
Aaron's done that thing before. They've both done it. I know once they went down to Cheyenne to go do it, and they came back with probably $300. I don't know if they ever chose, like, gay people as their particular targets before, but anyone that looked like they had a lot of money and that was, that they could outnumber or overpower was fair game.
So do you think there was any homophobia at all involved in any of this that contributed to some of it?
Probably. It probably would have pissed him off that that Matthew was gay because he didn't like the gay people I've seen him interact with. He was fine, as long as they didn't, hit on him. As long as it didn't come up.
As long as they weren't doing it in front of him.
So you get the impression he knew other gay people?
I'm sure that he knew people that are gay. I mean, he worked up with the KFC, and there are a couple people up there that, yeah. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, because, like, half the people I know in Laramie are gay.
What would you guys say to Aaron if you saw him right now?
Well, first of all, I'd ask him if he'd ever do any more tweak.
If I saw Aaron now, I'd be like, man, why'd you fuck up like that? But I'd want to make sure he's doing good in there. But I'm sure he is, though. I'd probably just want to, hang out with him.
Smoke a bowl with him.
I bet he wants one so bad.
You guys both went to Laramie High?
Yeah. Can't you tell? We're a product of our society.
On a day that is traditionally given over to nothing more profound than collegiate exuberance and the good fortunes of the University of Wyoming football team, this community on the High Plains had a different kind of homecoming this Saturday, as they searched their souls in the wake of a vicious, apparent anti-gay hate crime.
University President Philip Dubois.
This was homecoming weekend. There were a lot of people in town, and a homecoming parade is scheduled. And the students had planned to tag on to the back of it, behind the banner, supporting Matt. And everybody will be wearing the armbands that the students had made.
I live in the center of town.
Harry Woods.
My apartment has windows on two opposite streets. One goes north, the other goes south. And that's exactly the homecoming parade route. Now, on the day of the parade, I had a cast on my leg because of a fall. And I was very disappointed because I really wanted to march with the people who were marching for Matthew, but I couldn't. So I watched from my window. And it was just... I'm 52 years old. I'm gay. And I've lived here for many years, and I've seen a lot, but I was very moved when I saw the tag at the end of the homecoming parade. About 100 people walking behind the banner for Matthew Shepard. Then the parade went down to the end of the street to make a U-turn. And I went to the other side of my apartment so I could wait for it to come south down the other street.
I was right up in front where they were holding the banner for Matthew Shepard. And let me tell you, I've never had goosebumps so long in my life. It was amazing. A mass of people, families, mothers holding up their 6-year-old kids, tying these armbands around these 6-year-old kids, trying to explain to them why they should be wearing an armband. It's just absolutely incredible. One of the most beautiful things I've ever done in my life.
Oh, about 10 minutes went by, and sure enough, the parade started coming down the street. And I noticed the most incredible thing. As the parade came down the street, the number of people who were marching for Matthew Shepard had grown 5 times. At least 500 people marching for Matthew. 500 people. Can you imagine? The tag at the end was larger than the entire parade. And the people just kept joining in. And you know what? I started to cry. Tears were streaming down my face. And I thought, thank God I got to see this in my lifetime. My second thought was, thank you, Matthew.
Well, I haven't really been all that involved, per se.
Sherry Johnson.
My husband's a highway patrolman, so that's really the only way I've known about it. Now, when I first found out, I just thought it was horrible. I can't. Nobody deserves that. I don't care who you are. But the other thing that was not brought out is at the same time that happened, that patrol man was killed, and there was nothing. Nothing. They didn't say anything about the old man that killed him. He was driving down the road, and he shouldn't have been driving, and killed him, and it was just a little piece in the paper. And we lost one of our guys. You know, my husband worked with him. This man was brand new on the force. But I mean, here's one of ours, and it was just a little piece in the paper. And you know, a lot of it is my feeling that the media is portraying Matthew Shepard as a saint and making him as a martyr, and I don't think he was. I don't think he was that pure. Now, I didn't know him, but there's just so many things about him that I found out that it's scary. You know, about his character and spreading AIDS and a few other things. You know, being the kind of person that he was, well, he was just a barfly, you know? And I think he pushed himself around. I think he flaunted it. Oh, everybody's got problems. But why they exemplified him, I don't know. What's the difference if you're gay? A hate crime's a hate crime. You murder someone, you hate them. It's got nothing to do with if you're gay or prostitute or whatever. I don't understand. I don't understand.
Company member Lee Fundakowski.
This is one of the last days on our second trip to Laramie. Greg and I have been conducting interviews nonstop, and we are exhausted.
We had to meet with Father Roger at 7:30 in the morning. I was wishing we could skip it all together, but we have to follow through to the end. So, here we go. 7:30 a.m., 2 queers and a Catholic priest.
Matthew Shepard has served us well. You realize that? He has served us well. And I do not mean to condemn Matthew to perfection, but I cannot mention anyone who has done more for this community than Matthew Shepard. And I'm not going to sit here and say I was just this bold guy, no fear. I was scared. I was very vocal in the community when this happened. And I thought, you know, should we call up the bishop and ask for permission to have the vigil? But then I was like, hell no, I'm not going to do that. His permission doesn't make it correct. You realize that? And I'm not knocking bishops, but what is correct is correct. You people you're just out here on a search, though. I will do this. I will trust you people that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You say it correct. I think you have a responsibility to do that. Don't make matters worse. You think violence is what they did to Matthew. They did do violence to Matthew, but, you know, when somebody calls you a fag or, you know, a les or whatever.
Or a dyke.
A dyke, yeah, a dyke. Do you realize that that is violence? That is the seed of violence. And I would resent it immensely if you were to use anything that I said to somehow cultivate that kind of violence, even in its smallest form. I would resent it immensely. You need to know that.
Thank you, Father, for saying that.
Just deal with what is true. You know what is true. You need to do your best to say it correct.
Hello?
Reverend?
Yes, hello.
Yes, I believe your wife told you a bit about why I'm contacting you.
Yeah, she did. And let me just tell you, I don't think I really want to talk about this anymore. I am somewhat involved, and I just.
Oh
I just
yeah,
don't-
I completely understand, and I don't blame you. You know, I went to your service on Sunday.
You're at my services on Sunday?
Yes, I was.
On Sunday?
Yes, this past Sunday.
Did I meet you?
Yes, you greeted me at the beginning, I believe.
Well, let me just tell you, I'm not afraid to be controversial or to speak my mind on this. That may not be the views of my congregation per se, but as I mentioned, I am somewhat involved. That the people on this case, the girlfriend of the accused is a member of our congregation. And one of the accused has visited.
Mm-hmm.
And those two I've mentioned, the accused, well, they have forfeited their lives. And we've been after those two boys I've mentioned for a while, trying to get them to do right, to live right. And now, one boy's on suicide watch. And I will work with him, until they put him in the chair and turn on the juice. I will work for his salvation. Now, I do believe that they deserve the death penalty, I do. And I will work with them spiritually.
Right, I understand.
And now, as far as the victim, I know that lifestyle is legal. But let me just tell you one thing. I hope that Matthew Shepard, as he was tied to that fence, had a chance to reflect on a time when someone had spoken the word of the Lord to him, and that right before he slipped into a coma, he had a chance to reflect on his lifestyle.
Thank you, Reverend. I appreciate your talking with me.
About 11:30 that night, I had just barely gone to bed, and Margot, our chief operating officer, called and said his blood pressure has started to drop. Well, let's wait and see. She called me about 10 after. He just died. So I quick got dressed and came in and went into the ICU where the family was. And Judy came up and she put her arms around me, and I put my arms around her, and we just stood there, honestly, for about 10 minutes. Just because what else do you do? Then we had to sit and talk about things that you just don't. Dennis, it's now public knowledge. And I'm going to go out there now, tell the whole world that this has happened. Because by this point, it was clear to us that it was the world. It was the whole world. And then Judy told me what she wanted me to say, and I went out at 4:00 a.m.
Matthew Shepard, medical update for 4:30 a.m., Monday, October 12th.
At 12 midnight on Monday, October 12th, Matthew Shepard's blood pressure began to drop. We immediately notified the family, who were already at the hospital. At 12:53 a.m., Matthew Shepard died. His family was at his bedside. The family did release the following statement. The family again asked me to express their sincerest gratitude to the entire world for the overwhelming response for their son. The family was grateful that they did not have to make a decision regarding whether or not to continue life support for their son. Like a good son, he was caring to the end, and he removed guilt or stress from the family. He came into the world premature and left the world premature. Matthew's mother said, "Go home, give your kids a hug, and don't let a day go by without telling them you love them." And I don't know how I let that happen. I lost it on national television. But you know, we had been up for like 72 hours straight, gone home and gone to sleep for half an hour and had to get up and come in, and maybe I was just I don't know. But in a moment of complete brain deadness, while I was out there reading that statement, I thought of my own 4 daughters. And go home and hug your kids. She doesn't have her kid anymore. And I'm standing there and I'm thinking, this is so lame. And then we started getting people sending us emails and letters, and most of them were just generally very kind. But I did get this one. This guy wrote me and said, "Do you cry like a baby on TV for all your patients, or just the faggots?" And as I've told you before, homosexuality is not a lifestyle with which I agree. But having been thrown into this, I guess I didn't understand the magnitude with which some people hate. And of all the letters we got, there were maybe 2 or 3 like that. Most of them were, "Thank you for your caring and compassion." And Matthew had caring and compassion from the moment he got here.
I spoke to Doc today, and I told him we would soon be coming back for the upcoming trials of Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney, and this is what he said. "I'll tell you what, you put those 2 boys to death, it would defeat everything Matt would be thinking about on them. Because Matt would not want to see those 2 die. He'd want to leave them with hope. Hope, just like the whole world hoped Matt would survive. The whole thing, you see, ropes around hope. Hope.
The day of the funeral, it was snowing so bad, big, huge, wet snowflakes. And when I got there were thousands of people in just black with umbrellas everywhere. And there were 2 churches, one for the immediate family, invited guests, people of that nature, and one for everybody else who just wanted to be there. And there were still hundreds of people who couldn't get into either of the churches. And I remember there was this big park nearby, and that's where these people were. And this park was full.
The liturgy today is an Easter liturgy. It finds its meaning in the resurrection. The service invites your full participation. The Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Let us pray.
And I guess it was like the worst storm that they had had.
Tiffany Edwards.
Like that anybody could ever tell. Like trees fell down and the power went out for a couple of days because of it. And I just thought, it's like the forces of the universe at work, Whatever higher spirit is like that blows storms was blowing that storm.
For our brother Matthew, let us pray to our Lord Jesus Christ, who said, "I am the resurrection and the life." We pray to the Lord.
Yes, Lord.
My most striking memory from the funeral
Carrie Drake, Casper Star Tribune,
was seeing the Reverend Fred Phelps from Kansas, and that scene go up in the park.
Do you believe the Bible? Do you believe you're supposed to separate the precious from the vile. You don't believe that part of the Bible? You stand over there, ignorant of the fact that the Bible, for every 2 verses it talks about God's love, it talks about God's hate.
A bunch of high school kids who got out early came over and started yelling at some of the people in the protest, the Fred Phelps people. And across the street, you had people lining up for the funeral. Well, I remember this one guy. I remember this skinhead who was dressed in leather and spikes everywhere. And he came over from across the street where the funeral was, and he came into the crowd. And I just thought, oh boy, this is going to be a really ugly confrontation. But instead, he started leading them in amazing grace.
We wouldn't be here if this was just another murder the state was going to deal with. The state deals with hundreds of murders every single day. But this murder is different. Because the fags are bringing us out here trying to make Matthew Shepard into a poster boy for the gay lifestyle, and we're going to answer it. It's just that simple.
6 months later, the company returned to Laramie for the trial of Rassoul Henderson, the first of the 2 perpetrators. It was to be a capital murder trial. When we got to the Albany County Courthouse, Fred Phelps was already there.
You don't like that attribute of God.
But so was Romaine Patterson.
That perfect attribute of God. Well, we love that attribute of God, and we're going to preach it. Because God's hatred is pure. It's a determination. It's a determination that is going to send some people to hell. That's God's hatred.
After seeing Fred Phelps protesting at Matthew's funeral, and finding out that he was coming to Laramie for the trial of Rassoul Henderson, I decided that somebody needed to stand toe-to-toe with this guy and show the differences. And I think at times like this, when we're talking about hatred, as much as the nation is right now, that someone needs to show there is a better way of dealing with that kind of hatred. So our idea is to dress up like angels. And so we've designed an angel outfit for our wings are huge. They're like big-ass wings. And there will be 10 to 20 of us that are angels. And what we're going to do is we're going to encircle Phelps. And because of our big wings, we're going to completely block him. So this big-ass band of angels comes in. We don't say a fucking word. We just stand there and we turn our backs to him. And we are a group of people bringing forth a message of peace and love and compassion. And we're calling it Angel Action. Yeah, this 21-year-old little lesbian is ready to walk the line with him.
When those old preachers laid their hands on me, it's called an ordination. Then they issue a charge. Mine was from Isaiah 58:1. Cry aloud, spare not. Lift up thy voice like a trumpet, and show my people their transgressions.
And I knew that my angels were going to be getting the brunt of everything he had to yell and say. I mean, we were going to be blocking his view, and he was going to be like pissed off to all hell. So I went out and I bought all my angels earplugs.
The court is in session.
Romaine Patterson's sister, Trish Steger.
As soon as they started jury selection, everybody was coming into my shop with, I don't want to be on this trial. I hope they don't call me. Or, oh my God, I've been called. How do I get off? Just wanting to get as far away from it as they could. Very fearful that they were going to have to be a part of that jury. And then I heard Henderson had to sit in the courtroom while they questioned the prospective jurors. And one of the questions that they ask is, would you be willing to put this person to death? And I understand a lot of the comments were, yes, I would.
Yes, I would, Your Honor.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Yes, sir.
No problem.
Yep.
Well, can you imagine hearing that? You know, juror after juror after juror.
You entered a plea of not guilty earlier, Mr. Henderson, but I understand you'd like to change your plea today. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And you understand that the recommended sentence here, Mr. Henderson, is 2 life sentences?
Yes, sir.
And do you understand these sentences may run concurrently or they may run consecutively?
Yes, sir.
Mr. Henderson, I will now ask you how you wish to plead, guilty or not guilty?
Guilty.
Before the court decides as to whether these sentences are to run concurrent or consecutive, I understand there are statements to be made by at least one individual?
This is an excerpt made to the court by Lucy Thompson.
Yes, as the grandmother and the person who raised Rassoul, along with my family, we have written the following statement. Our hearts ache for the pain and suffering that the shepherds have went through. We have prayed for your family since the very beginning. Many times throughout the day, I have thought about Matt, and you will continue to be in our thoughts and prayers, as we know that your pain will never go away. You have showed such mercy in allowing us to have this plea, and we are so grateful that you are giving us all the opportunity to live. Your Honor, we, as a family, hope that as you sentence Rassoul, that you will do it concurrently to life terms. For the Rassoul we know and love, we humbly plead, Your Honor, do not take Rassoul completely out of our lives forever.
Thank you. Mr. Henderson, you have a constitutional right to make a statement if you would like to do so. Do you have anything you would like to say?
Yes, I would, Your Honor. Mr. and Mrs. Shepherd, there is not a moment that goes by that I don't see what happened that night. I know what I did was very wrong, and I greatly regret what I did. You have my greatest sympathy for what happened. I hope that one day you will be able to find it in your hearts to forgive me. Your Honor, I know what I did was wrong. I'm very sorry for what I did. And I am ready to pay my debt for what I did.
Mr. Henderson, you drove the vehicle that took Matthew Shepherd to his death. You bound him to a fence in order that he may be more savagely beaten and that he may not be able to escape. You left him out there for 18 hours, knowing full well he was there, perhaps with the opportunity to save his life, and you did nothing. Mr. Henderson, this court does not believe that you feel any true remorse for your part in this matter, and I wonder if you fully realize the gravity of what you have done. The court finds it appropriate, therefore, that the sentence be ordered as follows. As to count 3, that being felony murder with robbery, you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. On count 1, kidnapping, that you are to serve a period of imprisonment for the term of your natural life. Sentencing for count 1 to run consecutive to sentencing of count 3.
After the hearing, we spoke to Russell Henderson's Mormon home teacher.
I've known Russell's family for 38 years. Russell's only 21, so I've known him his entire life. I ordained Russell a priest of the Mormon church, so when this happened, you can imagine disbelief. After the sentencing, the church held a disciplinary council, and the result of that meeting was to excommunicate Russell from the church. And what that means is your name is taken off the records of the church and you just disappear. Russell's reaction to that was not positive. It hurt him, and it hurt him too at that point to realize how serious a transgression he had committed. But I will not desert Rassoul. That's a matter of my religion and my relationship with the family.
Before we left Laramie, we met again with Rebecca Hilliker at the theater department. She's producing Angels in America this year at the university.
I think that's the focus the university has taken, is that we have a lot of work to do, that we have an obligation to try to find ways to reach our students. So the question is, how do we move? How do we reach a whole state where there are some really deep-seated hostilities towards gays? How do you reach them? This is the beginning. And guess who's auditioning for the lead?
My parents were like, so, what plays are you doing at school this year? And I was like, Angels in America, and I gave them the whole list of plays. And they were like, Angels in America? Isn't that play you did in high school? That scene you did in high school? And I was like, yeah. And then they were like, huh. So you gonna audition for it? And I was like, yeah. And then we got into this huge argument. And the best thing that I knew that I had on them was like, okay, so they had just seen me in a performance of Macbeth. And on stage, I like murder a little kid and Lady Macduff and two other guys. And she kept going like, well, you know, homosexuality is a sin. She kept saying that. And I'm just like, Mom, I just played a murderer tonight. And you didn't seem to have a problem with that. I tell you, I have never prepared this much for a role in my life. Never ever. Not even close.
Not having to deal that much with gay society here in Laramie.
Detective Sergeant Rob Bree.
But once we started to actually dig into the case and actually speak with the people that were gay and figure out what their underlying fears were, well, then it started to hit home. This is America. You don't have the right to feel that kind of fear. And of course, you're going to have those that hold on to their old ideals. And hey, I was one of them 14 months ago, but I don't want to put up with it. And I don't want to listen to it anymore. And if you don't like my views on it, that's fine. The door goes both ways. I already lost a few buddies over it. But I feel more comfortable, and I can sleep at night.
Well, you're tested every 3 months.
Reggie Flutie.
And I was able to get the DNA test done. And so they got me to Fort Collins. They drew the blood there, flew it to Michigan, and did all the DNA work there. And which was a week later, I knew I was negative for good.
I tell you, we were all on our knees saying Hail Marys.
You were just elated, you know, and you think, thank God.
And so what is the first thing she does?
I stuck my tongue right in my husband's mouth. I was just happy, you know, you're just so happy. And you think, yeah, I hope I did this service well. You know, I hope I did it with some kind of integrity. And so you're just really happy. And my daughters just bawled.
Oh, they were so happy.
And the force.
Oh, boy.
We went out and got shit-faced. They all bought me drinks, too. It was great. And everybody hugged and cried. And, you know, I kissed everybody who walked through the door.
Now, Reggie, they don't need to know that.
I didn't care if they were male or female. They each got a kiss on the lips.
Now, what part of what I just said didn't you understand?
Oh, get over it, Mom.
Almost a year to the day that Matthew Shepard died, the trial for Aaron James McKinney was set to begin.
Probably the question that most of you have on your mind is how the McKinney case will proceed.
Kyle Raruka, prosecuting attorney.
And is the decision of the county attorney's office that we will definitely be a death penalty case.
Part of me wants McKinney to get it. But I'm not very proud of that. I've been on and off and on. I can't say what I would do. I am too personally involved.
Oh, I believe in the death penalty 100%. You know, because I want to make sure that guy's ass dies. This is one instance where I truly believe with all my heart An eye for an eye and a tooth for a tooth.
I don't know much about the death penalty, but I do know I don't want to see them walk out of Rollins Penitentiary. You know, I'll pay my nickel or percentage of tax or whatever, nickel a day to make sure that his ass stays in there and never sees society again, and definitely never steps foot in my bar again.
I don't believe in the death penalty. It's too much for me. I don't think that one person should be killed as redemption for his having killed another. Two wrongs don't make a right.
How can I protest if the shepherds want McKinney dead? I just can't interfere in that. But on a personal level, I knew Aaron in grade school. We never called him Aaron. He was called AJ. How can we put AJ McKinney? How can we put AJ McKinney to death?
I think right now, our most important teachers have to be Russell Henderson and Aaron McKinney. They have to be our teachers. How did you learn? What did we, as a society, do to teach you that? See, I don't know if many people are ready to let them be our teachers. I think it would be wonderful if the judge said, in addition to your sentence, you must tell your story. You must tell your story.
All rise. State of Wyoming versus Aaron James McKinney, docket number 8631. The Honorable Barton R. Boyd presiding. The court is in session.
During the trial for Aaron McKinney, the prosecution played a tape recording of his confession.
My name is Rob Debris, Sergeant for the Sheriff's Office. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and may be used against you in the court of law.
The following is an excerpt of that confession.
So, you guys, you and Russ, are just at the fireside by yourselves, just kind of hanging out, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And where did you guys go after you left the fireside?
Some kid wanted to ride home.
And what did he look like?
Like a queer. Such a queer dude.
He looked like a queer.
Yeah, like a fag,
How did you guys meet him?
Wanted to ride home, and I was just like, this dude's drunk, let's just take him home.
So when did you and Russ talk about jacking him up?
Kind of talked about it at the bar.
Okay, what happened next?
Well, we drove out past Walmart, and we get over there, and he starts grabbing my leg and my genitals, and I'm like, look, I'm not a fucking faggot. You touch me again, you're gonna get it. I don't know what the hell he was trying to do, but I beat him up pretty bad. I think I killed him.
What did you beat him up with?
Passed out, I don't know. It was like my fist, my pistol, the butt of the gun. I was wondering what happened to me. I mean, I had a few beers, and I don't know what it was like. I could see what was going on, but I don't know. It was like someone else was doing it.
So what was the first thing that Matt said or did inside the truck that made you want to hit him?
Well, he put his hand on my leg, and then he slid his hands up as if he was going to grab my balls.
When that defense team argued that McKinney did what he did because Matthew made a pass at him, I wanted to vomit. Because that's like saying it's okay. It's like the Twinkie defense when the guy killed Harvey Milk in Moscone. It's the same thing.
As much as a part of me didn't want the defense of them saying that it was a gay bashing or that it was gay panic, a part of me is really grateful because I was really scared that in the trial they were going to try to say that it was a robbery or that it was about drugs. So when they used gay panic in their defense, I felt this is good. If nothing else, the truth will be told. The truth is coming out.
So did Matthew ever try to defend himself against you or, hit you back?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, he did his little swings or whatever, but he wasn't very effective.
All right, and how many times would you say that you hit him inside the truck before you guys stopped where you left him?
I probably hit him 2 or 3 times, probably 3 times with my fist and about 6 times with the pistol.
Did he ask you to stop?
Well, yeah, he was getting the shit kicked out of
Well,
him.
what did he say?
Well, after he asked me to stop, most all he was doing was screaming.
So, Russ kind of dragged him over towards the fence and tied him up, I'm assuming, right?
Something like that. I just remember Russ was kind of laughing at first, and then he got pretty scared.
Was Matthew conscious as he was being tied up?
Yeah. And I told him to turn around and don't look at my license plate number because I didn't want him to tell the police. And then I asked him what my license plate said, and he read it, and that's why I hit him a few more times.
Well, just to be sure, right? So, you obviously don't like gay people.
No, I don't.
Would you say you hate them?
I don't really hate them, but when they start coming on to me and stuff like that, I get pretty aggravated.
Did he threaten you?
This gay dude?
Yeah.
Not really.
Let me just ask you this. Why did you guys take his shoes?
I don't know. Now I'm never going to see my son again.
I don't know. You'll go to the court sometime today.
Today? I'll go in there and plead guilty or not guilty today?
No, you will be arraigned today.
Is he going to die for sure?
There is no doubt that Mr. Shepard is going to die.
So what are they going to do? They're going to give me 25 to life or just the death penalty and get it over with?
That's not my job. That's the job of the judge and the jury.
Has the jury reached a verdict?
We have, Your Honor. We, the jury, impaneled and sworn to try the above entitled case, after having well and truly tried the matter, unanimously find as follows. As to the charge of kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of aggravated robbery, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty. As to the charge of first-degree felony murder kidnapping, we find the defendant, Aaron James McKinney, guilty.
Aaron McKinney was found guilty of felony murder, which meant the jury could give him the death penalty.
That evening, Judy and Dennis Shepard were approached by the McKinney's defense team, who pled for their client's life. The prosecution had indicated that they would defer to the family's wishes on whether or not to pursue the death penalty.
The following morning, Dennis Shepard made a statement to the court. Here is some of what he said.
My son Matthew did not look like a winner. He was rather uncoordinated, and he wore braces from the age of 13 until the day he died. However, in his all too brief life, he proved that he was a winner. On October 6th, 1998, he tried to show the world he could win again. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero lost. On October 12th, 1998, my firstborn son and my hero died 50 days before his 22nd birthday. I keep wondering the same thing that I did when I first saw him in the hospital. What would he become? How would he change his piece of the world to make it better? Matt officially died in a hospital in Fort Collins, Colorado. He actually died on the outskirts of Laramie, tied to a fence. You, Mr. McKinney, and your friend, Mr. Henderson, left him there by himself. But he was not alone. There were his lifelong friends with him, friends that he had grown up with. You're probably wondering who those friends were. First, he had the beautiful night sky and the same stars and moon we used to see through a telescope. Then he had the daylight and the sun to shine on him. And through it all, he was breathing in the scent of the pine trees from the snowy range. He heard the wind, the ever-present Wyoming wind, for the last time. He had one more friend with him. He had God. And I feel better knowing he wasn't alone. Matt's beating, hospitalization, and funeral focused worldwide attention on hate. Good is coming out of evil. People have said, enough is enough. I miss my son. But I'm proud to say that he was my son. Judy has been quoted as being against the death penalty. It's been stated that Matt was against the death penalty. Both statements are wrong. Matthew believed that there were crimes and incidents that justified the death penalty. I too believe in the death penalty. I would like nothing better than to see you die, Mr. McKinney. However, this is the time to begin the healing process, to show mercy to someone who refused to show any mercy. Mr. McKinney, I'm going to grant you life, as hard as it is to do so because of Matthew. Every time you celebrate Christmas, a birthday, the 4th of July, remember that Matt isn't. Every time that you wake up in your prison cell, remember you had the opportunity and the ability to stop your actions that night. You robbed me of something very precious, and I will never forgive you. Mr. McKinney, I give you life in the memory of someone who no longer lives. May you have a long life, and may you thank Matthew every day for it.
Me and Debris hugged and cried, and everybody had tears in their eyes, and they're just so thankful, and Mr. Shepherd was crying, and then that got me bawling, and everybody just...
This is all we lived and breathed every day for a year. This has been our case every day for a year, and now it's all over.
Maybe now we can go on and we can quit being stuck,
It just hit me today, the minute I left the courthouse, that the reason God wanted me to find him is for he didn't have to die out there alone, And if I wouldn't have came along, they wouldn't have found him for another couple of weeks. So it makes me really glad that he didn't have to die out there alone.
I'm just glad it's over. I really am. Testifying in that trial was one of the hardest things I've ever done. And don't get me wrong, I love the stage. I really do. I love it. But it's kind of tricky because what you have is lawyers questioning you from this angle, but the answers need to be funneling over this way to the jury. So what you have to do basically is establish a funneling system. And that's hard for me because I'm a natural conversationalist. So it's just natural instinct that when someone asks you a question, you turn and you make eye contact. But then it's kind of tricky when you literally have to scoot over, change your position, in effect, funnel over to where the jury is. But I was able to do that several times over the course of my testimony.
On our last trip, I had the good fortune of seeing Jedediah Schultz play the role of Pryor in Angels in America. After performance, we spoke. I didn't, for the longest time, let myself get personally involved in the Matthew Shepherd thing. The whole thing just seemed blown out of proportion. It didn't seem real. Matthew Shepard was just a name instead of an individual. I don't know. It's weird, man. You know, it's it's just so weird. I guess I just feel bad for the person that I used to be. For the things that I told you. That's why I want to hear those interviews from last year and what I said. I just can't believe I said all that stuff about homosexuals, you know? How could I let that stuff make me think that you were different than me?
This is Romaine Patterson.
Well, a year ago, I wanted to be a rock star. That was my goal. And now that's obviously changed in the fact that throughout the last year I've really realized my role in taking my part. So now instead of going to school for music, I'm going to go to school for communications and political science. Because I have a career in political activism. Actually, I just found out I'm going to be honored in Washington, D.C. from the Anti-Defamation League. And whenever I think of the angels or any of the speaking I've done, you know, Matthew's like guiding this little path with his light for me to walk down. And whenever we get to another door, he opens it. And he says, okay, next step. And if I get to be a rock star on the side, okay.
This is Jonas Sloniker.
Change is not an easy thing, and I don't think people were up to it here. They got what they wanted. Those two boys got what they deserve, and we look good now. Justice has been served. It's the OK Corral. We shot down the villains. We sent the prostitutes on the train. The town's all cleaned up, and we don't need to talk about it anymore. You know, it's been a year since Matthew Shepard died, and they haven't passed shit in Wyoming. At a state level, any town, nobody anywhere has passed any kind of laws. Anti-discrimination laws or hate crime legislation. They haven't passed anything, anywhere. What's come out of it? What's come out of this that's concrete or lasting?
We all said we would meet again. One last time by the fence.
I've been up to that site in my limousine, okay? And I remember to myself the night he and I drove around together and he said, Laramie sparkles, doesn't it? And where he was up there, if you sit exactly where he was up there, Laramie sparkles from there with the low-lying clouds and the blue lights bouncing off the clouds, and it goes zzz, 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 right over the whole city. I mean, it will just blow you away. And Matt was right there in that spot. And I could just picture him seeing, I could just picture in his eyes, the last thing he saw on this earth was the sparkling lights.
We spent the last 2 days packing a year's worth of material and saying our goodbyes. We've been here 6 times and conducted over 200 interviews. Jedediah cried when he said goodbye.
Marge wished us luck, and when we asked her how Laramie would feel about seeing a play about itself, she said,
I think we'd enjoy it. To show it's not the hellhole of the earth would be nice, but that depends on how you portray us, which is up to how, in turn, Laramie behaves.
As we were getting off the phone, she said to me,
Now you take care. I love you, honey.
Doc asked me if I wanted to ghostwrite a book about the whole event, and Galloway invited me or anybody else a place to stay if and when we ever come back to Laramie. He also seemed interested as to whether there'd be open auditions for this play.
We left Laramie about 7 in the evening. On the way to Denver, I looked in my rearview mirror to take one last look at the town.
And I will speak with you. I will trust that if you write a play of this, that you say it right. You need to do your best to say it correct.
And in the distance, I could see the sparkling lights of Laramie, Wyoming.